Hey guys, how's it going? So today we're going to be looking at how to make some Riddim. This is actually one of my more recent tracks, so I'll be sure to link it down below if you want to have a listen to it on SoundCloud. And yeah, let's just get right into it. This is what we're going to be making. Alright, so the first thing we're going to have a look at here is my kick and my snare alone. Soloed out, they sound like this. Pretty basic Riddim stuff. Nothing on the group as a whole. On the kick we have a multi-band compressor just bringing down some of the sub bass since it was a little too much and clashing with my actual sub bass. And then on the snare, just taking out some of that very low end. That's all that's going on. Then the next section here we have is all the cymbals and kind of background effects elements, the real technical stuff, technical wording. Alone, soloed out, they sound like this. Now, since this is Riddim, we aren't going to get a whole lot of filling elements from the basses or the kick and the snare, so this is where we have to fill up a lot of that empty space. So the first thing I have here is a side chain to the kick and the snare, making sure those are coming through in the mix. Then a little hi-hat loop I made with stock Ableton samples that I'm taking out the very low end and some of the mid and bringing down the mid highs just a tiny bit. And soloed out sounds like this. The next thing I have here is a Virtual Riot drum loop that I found, and I liked a lot of the cymbals in it, but it also has a kick and a snare in it, so what I decided to do was just take out the very low end, even some of the mids going into the mid-high frequencies, and boosting the highs just a tiny bit, and soloed out sounds like this. Then the next thing I have is a crash cymbal that's hitting on each kick and snare and taking out again the low and the mid frequencies. This is just helping bring a little more impact into the kick and the snare to help mix them with the cymbals and effects and everything a little better. Sounds like this. Then the next sound we have here is a crowd cheering kind of thing. This is one of my more favorite things to put into tracks because if you put it in even at a slight volume, it really helps fill out the empty space without being obnoxious or anything. And this is what that sounds like. Super basic, just taking out again the low, some of the mid, and dipping in the mid-high frequencies. The next thing we have here is a crash cymbal every 4 bars. Sounds like this. Taking out the low and mid frequencies. And then before each crash cymbal, I have a reversed crash cymbal and sounds like this. Taking out the low and the mid frequencies. Then in the second half of the drop, I have this little riser that helps bring a little more energy and helps kind of lead into the second half of the drop, which sounds like this. So yeah, that's it for that whole effect section. Again, taking out the low and the mid. I don't know why I always gotta throw that in, but gotta do it. So yeah, that's it for that section. Now onto the fun stuff, which is all of the bass sounds, and alone, soloed out, they sound like this. Oh, put this up. Now, so on the group as a whole, we have an auto filter here that's really only high passing everything at the very, very end, and that's again just to help lead up into the second half of the drop. Then we have a glue compressor that's bringing everything in this section together a little bit and making it sound like it fits a little better. Then a sidechain compressor to my kick and my snare. The main bass sound we have here is this serum patch, and soloed out sounds like this. Now, to get into the more technical stuff, lots of these effects are really just helping bring a little more crunchiness to it. The base of the sound is actually in the serum patch, and if I turn off all the effects, it sounds like this. Really just a lot quieter. But to get into the serum patch, I have this wavetable, which is actually a massive wavetable. You can see it here. And you can download these for free online. Great stuff. I love using them in Serum. All I did here was take LFO1 and modulate the level, bring it down an octave, and turn the unison up to 16 and the detune almost all the way up. Then we're FMing it from B, which is just a simple saw wave with the sync turned up, and also the unison and detune turned up, and then this LFO just barely modulating FM. And then we have this little macro knob that's actually doing quite a bit to move the sound. I didn't want it to just be a stagnant sound, so to change it up a little bit, we move the FM dial with that and then just turn it all the way up and down, as you can see right there. Then we have a high pass notch filter. It's also being modulated by LFO1. In the effects section, we have this hyperdimension expander, which I don't actually think is doing anything. Don't know why it's on there. But then we have some distortion, the X shaper setting, turned about halfway up, then a multi-band compressor, and the chorus that's being modulated by LFO2. We turn the rate and the delay and depth all the way down, and are just modulating the first delay and the mix. So, yep, that's it for the bass sound. And then to get into some of the effects, we have this grain delay that I turned the time on and boosted it just a little bit and turned the pitch up 12 semitones. And what this does is kind of add a little bit of layering and depth to your bass, because with it, it sounds like this, and without. Not a huge difference, but something I just like to add to make your sound a little more interesting. Then a vocoder turned up about 12%, turned all 40 bands on, and brought down the depth and the format swelled 12 semitones. And with it, sounds like this. Then without. Then to add some more distortion and kind of crunch to the sound, I added Camel Crusher, the Annihilate setting. I know, very fitting for the track. And all that's doing is, again, adding some distortion. So now it sounds like this. Then, of course, since we're making dubstep, we got to add OTT. And 2 OTTs, because why not? So the first one makes it sound like this. Then the second one. And then finally we have this EQ here, just taking out the low end because I have my own separate sub, and then bringing down the mid-high frequencies and boosting the highs just slightly. So yeah, that's it for our main bass. And now, since we had that, everything else has to kind of revolve and fit around that. So I actually just copied this bass and played with some of the settings for the original stab for each 4 bars. That sounds like this. And as you can hear, it sounds pretty much the same. I just played with LFO1 here and made it more of a stab instead of a Riddim kind of whomp. You know, again, real technical jargon we're talking about here. Everything is pretty much the same. I think I played with the EQ, bringing down the mids, or the low mids here a little bit, but that's pretty much the only difference. Then we have it going twice as fast here, I think 1/8 notes at this little section. Sounds like this. Again, I'm pretty sure it's the exact same patch, just things moved around slightly, like the wavetable position. LFO2, I know I moved just slightly and kept LFO1 to that wompy Riddim kind of sound. So yeah, everything pretty much the same here, even all the effects are. And then to get into more different sounds, because I didn't want it to be just the same sound throughout, we get to this crunchy bend minus kind of bass, and soloed out, it sounds like this. I actually really like the sound of that bass. So without all the effects, turn all these off real quick. It sounds like this. Again, a lot quieter, but most of the sound, again, is coming from the Serum patch. Using another massive preset, which is Kangaroo, I believe, in Analog Electric, yeah, right here, and keeping the high pass notch filter, we turned it to bend minus instead and modulated it with LFO2 here, and then in LFO1 we're modulating the level again and the high pass notch filter, and then LFO3 is changing the wavetable position again just to give a little more movement to the sound. Then the effects section, we actually kept the X shaper, the compressor, and the chorus exactly the same, even being modulated by LFO2. Then we changed up the grain delay just a tiny bit. Wait, no, never mind. That's not a different sound. Kept the grain delay, so now it sounds like this. Then added a phaser to give it kind of more of that liquidy sound, I guess. I don't know. All these kind of adjectives make sense in my head. But yeah, this is what the phaser is actually doing to it. Turned up 24%. We just played with this little point here until we found something that I liked. And then the vocoder, we changed a little bit more. We turned the depth back to 100%, turned the format back up, and kept it at 40 bands, and turned it up to about 22%. That's what that's doing to it. Then Camel Crusher here, again just adding some distortion. And of course our good friends OTT. And then in the EQ we're taking out the low end, but we're boosting a little bit in the mid frequencies and taking out the mid highs and boosting the highs. That's pretty much it. And then we have these two stabs, which I believe are from the original bass, but again, sorry, I don't actually have the patch for this one. But we turned one up 12 semitones and kept one at the original, and this is what these sound like. That's all there is to it. And then we have these horns that are hitting at the beginning of each 4 bars and actually have a little filler part here. And soloed out, they sound like this. And then... And all we're doing to this is, again, taking out that very low end, dipping where most of the basses actually have their meat, so in the mid frequencies and boosting the highs a little bit, then adding just a little bit of OTT, because why not? And yeah, that's it for the basses. To get onto the last section, we got the sub, and you want to hear it soloed out. Pretty much just playing one stagnant note following the exact pattern that the actual bass is. And this is just a Serum patch, just this basic sine wave brought down an octave, a glue compressor, and then a side chain to the kick, pretty heavy. And then we added that same auto filter to bring it back up into the second half of the drop. So yeah, that's it for this track. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to follow all the social media. I'll leave links to that if you want to keep up to date with everything. Again, link in the sound, the actual track down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.